Hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in, and welcome back for another Hornet Security webinar, this one on Chaos to Compliance, HIPAA edition. Today we're talking about simplifying Microsoft 365 compliance headaches. My name is Andy Syrewicze, and with me I've got Eric Siron. How's it going, Eric?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Hey, we have a very interesting topic today here, right? So, we were just kind of talking about this prior to, hitting start broadcast here, right? How this is a very kind of hyper-focused topic, right? Not only are we talking about compliance, which of course is everyone's favorite, absolute favorite topic, right? Sarcasm there, sorry. But two, we're talking about compliance for Microsoft 365, but then we're even going deeper on just HIPAA, right? So kind of a very targeted webinar here, but very important webinar as well too. And we have a ton of stuff to get to, so I'm just going to kind of dive right in here. And let's talk about our agenda. So we're going to start with some introductions of myself, Eric, Hornet Security, and then we'll get into what you're here to listen about today. We're going to talk about the burden of compliance on IT teams, considerations and tools for compliance that are actually built into 365. There's a lot to think about when it comes to the stuff that's currently present in the 365 suite. We're going to talk about how third-party solutions like Hornet Security can come in and play a role. And then we'll get to some wrap-up and Q&A at the end. Now, quick word about the Q&A. If you have a question as we're going through our spiel, feel free to throw it in the questions form. If we can kind of stop organically and cover that question as we're talking about it, we'll be sure to do so. Otherwise, we'll get to it in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar today. And at the off chance we don't have enough time to get to every question, we'll be sure to reach out via email or publish all the questions in a blog post or something. We'll be sure your question gets answered in some way, shape, or form. So again, my name is Andy Syrewicze. I'm a security evangelist here at Hornet Security, and I've been around in the IT industry for 23-ish years now. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the Cloud and Data Center Management competency. And my focus has always been in infrastructure, security, cloud technologies. And when I think about HIPAA specifically, I spent a good chunk of my career in the trenches doing IT for a service provider. And during my time as a service provider, we serviced a lot of medical customers of various shapes and sizes. So I have some interesting stories, as I'm sure all of you do, working for medical organizations do. But it's certainly an interesting space. And Eric, I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric Siron. I have been working in healthcare IT directly for about 10 years now. Before that, I worked with all sorts of organizations, but also touched in like health insurance and other related fields. My experience goes all the way back to '98. And really, I always feel like I want to be the voice for the smaller organizations who don't always have the big support from the big vendors that we would all love to have so much of. And hopefully here with Andy today, we can share some of these insights and save you from some of the pain that we felt.
Definitely. That's really the goal here, right? It's just kind of help everybody. So it's any compliance is a pain in the neck, but we'll get to that. One more slide or two here. I just want to talk about Hornet Security really quick if you're not familiar with who we are. So, our mission, we really see ourselves as the company that empowers organizations of all sizes to focus on what it is they do while we handle security for them, right? Because people don't want to spend all their time focusing on security and not running their business. We want to step in and help with that. And really kind of our vision is that, we're going to be that guardian of your organization and of your M365 workloads. And really our value proposition along those lines is that we offer the most comprehensive cloud security solution for 365 on the market. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit here later on. We are a worldwide company, so really got our start in Europe. So we're a little less known in the US because of that, but we are a global organization. You can see we have a number of offices and data centers around the world. So certainly global, wherever you are, we most certainly have the resources to help you. And how did it all start? Well, company got its start back in 2007 and really kind of began the process of internationalization. Boy, that's quite a word. Back in 2008, right? As the company grew, they kind of rebranded in 2015 as Hornet Security and started making a number of strategic acquisitions, right? They acquired Spamina, EveryCloud, Altero, Zero Spam, more recently IT Seal. So really making a lot of strategic acquisitions to, again, allow us to be the most comprehensive security solution for Microsoft 365 and to help you secure your organization so you can focus, again, on what it is you do. You know, in the case of healthcare, servicing patients, right? So enough of the introduction talk. Let's talk about compliance, right? And before we dive in here, I got to make the lawyers happy, right? And I have to start with a disclaimer, right? And I always start with this, the fact that, hey, compliance is a legal and regulatory issue. And as such, you should verify any and all information contained in this webinar with your compliance officer and or legal counsel, because not every organization has a compliance officer, right? And you should do that prior to any implementation within your own organization. Hornet Security and selfishly, us, the speakers, offer no guarantee of compliance to the active following advice or recommendations for this webinar. So in short, you know, we try our best to give you the information you need to be compliant, but everyone's situation is unique, right? And I'm sure, Eric, you can talk to this too, is the fact that every organization is different. Every organization has their own compliance headaches. We're just here to help show you some tools today that can help solve those problems. So with that, let's talk about the burden of compliance regulations on IT teams, because I don't know if you've seen this too, Eric. I'm sure you probably have, but in my experience, it seems like how do I want to put it? A large percentage of the compliance burden often falls squarely on the shoulders of IT.
Absolutely, 100%.
Now, whether or not, you know, that should be the case is something that we could probably talk about for a whole hour, right? But what does it really come down to knowing that, right? Well, compliance regulations on IT teams, it's high stakes. High stakes. I mean, the cost of a mistake can be disastrous, right? In terms of penalties, fines, loss of brand respect, trust, high stakes, obviously. Constantly evolving, right, Eric? I know it seems like every time I talk to you, there's some other, you know, healthcare regulation that you're trying to wrap your head around or solve. I swear, every time I sit down to look at all the current HIPAA pain points, they're different. every time I look at them, right? So constantly evolving, and that's not just specific to HIPAA. That's like compliance in general, right? Unfortunately, multiple regulatory bodies, depending on whatever your particular compliance regulatory body is. Again, in this case, we're talking HIPAA, but there are others where there are multiple bodies. I think for your particular case, Eric, right, you don't have to give organization names or anything, but I know you have healthcare regulations that you deal with, government regulations you deal with, and educational regulations you deal with, right?
Yep, and of course you get the finance too, because we're all tied up with insurance and credit card payments, you know. I mean, people got to pay, they pay their bills, you know.
So you have to worry about stuff like PCI too.
Yep.
Man, I don't know how you get through the day without drinking, my friend. Anyway, all of this really adds up to a huge time drain on IT staff, right? Think about how much time your standard medical organization, how much time the RT department spends on just worrying about compliance issues. It's a huge time drain that poses many challenges. And let's start with some examples, right? So just some examples to kind of set a baseline for our discussion here. I'm starting with a HIPAA example here of email compliance requirements, right? So Eric, you can probably speak to this more than I can, but when it comes to HIPAA email communication compliance, you know, you're gonna see this all over HIPAA, right? Is the protection of PII or PHI, or I think there's a couple other acronyms on top of that, right? That generally mean the same thing, but the protection of the patient's data is paramount above all, right? And so we're talking about email compliance. Encryption obviously is huge, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. A couple more examples of what email compliance requirements look like. Again, we're just using these as examples. CAN spam, which is US standard for commercial emails. You have things like email requirements to protect, or email requirements to protect recipients, sorry, no misleading header information, valid physical addresses. Again, these are just examples of the burden that these types of regulations put on IT teams. These are often problems that IT teams have to turn around and solve now because they have to adhere to these requirements, right? GDPR itself has an entire host of different requirements. And Eric, I don't know if your organization does, but I've worked with a lot of organizations that just because they have customers that work in or live in the EU, surprise, they are now regulated by GDPR as well, right? Even though they're a US organization, they now have to worry about GDPR because they have customers, or in the case of a healthcare organization, maybe they have patients that they've serviced that live in the EU. Now they are required to adhere to GDPR because of that. So that's often a surprising point for many organizations. A couple more compliance requirements as an example, and I think this one's very important because there's a HIPAA component here as well, and that is the retention of data, right? So there's many compliance requirements that require the retention of data in some way, shape, or form. In this particular case, this is GoBD. This is a German record keeping for financial records, right? They have to retain data for X amount of years. I just included this slide here because it lines up with many of the same requirements that we see in HIPAA. So again, a lot of this stuff falls squarely on the shoulders of IT teams, right? Unfortunately. And I think, Eric, you were going to talk a little bit more specifically on this HIPAA side of things to kind of help bring all of this into focus, right? Now I'll kind of let you roll with the slide here.
The huge part is that first thing in the beginning, and a lot of people are still, even today, trying to get their heads around how do we be HIPAA compliant? How does that work? What does that mean? And one of the things that it's probably easiest is that if you think it might be a HIPAA violation, just assume that it is. And I would say one of the first things is nothing in email. Just don't. We talk a lot about end-to-end encryption, and that's great, but it's risky, it's hard, and I don't know how many people have actually tried to work with end-to-end encryption, but we have tried it, and it is difficult. It's most of your regular patients out in the field are not going to have this and not really have a great way. So then we come up with all these workarounds, how to send this, go here to your private. Probably the easiest thing to do is just never send anything in email that would be considered personal health information. You can't really keep away from personally identifiable information because you're sending an email to an individual. But one thing you don't want is something like, hey, Kevin, let's talk about your cancer diagnosis. Because even if it is encrypted, imagine if somebody's sitting, in a meeting and they're sharing their screen, and all of a sudden the Outlook notification pops up that says, hey, Kevin, let's talk about your cancer. And then is that a HIPAA violation or is it not? And if the patient decides it is and convinces a judge that it is, then it is, right? So the best thing to do, just don't. Just say, hey, Kevin, we need to talk to you. We have, some kind of information that we want. So we do information only.
And when you say that, I mean, you're talking about like, hey, I'm the healthcare provider. I don't want to send details just in raw email, right? I want to at least use something like WebSafe, make the patient retrieve the information themselves, right? I can tell the patient that, hey, you've got some stuff waiting here. It's both, that's true. But you've got some stuff here waiting for you that you need to look at.
Yep.
This is how you would retrieve it, right? And maybe I'm getting ahead of you. I'm sorry if I am.
No,
but
this is exactly what this bottom part of the slide is. And your financial companies have figured this out. You'll get something like, we have a new regulatory document for you to look at, and it gets really, I'm sure most of us are now ignoring those, but it's a similar concept. Your provider should just send you, hey, we have something to talk to you about, and you can go in here and look at it, and maybe it's nothing, maybe it's a big deal, whatever. But the point is, it all needs to be initiated by the patient, because if a patient sits there and they open up an email if it's clearly something, or not an email, but they open up their patient portal and they're looking at their medical records and have somebody looking over their shoulder, that's a decision the patient made. And if they want to share that with the world, that's okay, because they get to decide that. But on the provider side, we don't get to do that. We have to assume nothing, assume nothing, or on the other side of it, assume everything, that everybody can see everything. So we send minimal information. That way you don't worry about it being a HIPAA violation. As soon as the patient initiates it and they start it, then okay, we're fine.
That's a good point. And I mean, I think the web safe method is it's useful. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more specifically to Hornet Security encryption services. We offer the web safe method as well, where again, you're sending an email to the patient saying, hey, you have an updated doctor visits record or something, or whatever it is, log in here to take a look at it. And I find that method to be useful for many organizations, the organizations that do it right. And there's a situation I always think of. I think I was talking to you about it, Eric, where my mother was having some medical work done not that long ago, and she was getting a kind of the same type of thing, like, hey, you have a medical record to take a look at, click here to retrieve it, right? And they don't have any PCs in the house, they just have their smartphones, right? And the particular medical organization was using Azure Information Protection to facilitate this, trying to use it in a way that was not patient friendly in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, like, I struggled to help my mother retrieve her medical records, and I've been in IT for 23 years, so I mean, I just imagine those patients that are out there trying to interact and work with medical organization as a patient who don't have IT background like that,
And we feel terrible for them. And also, my heart's going out to the people in IT, knowing perfectly well somebody said solve this problem, and they said, okay, how are we going to do that? And this was the best they could come up with, or the most that they were budgeted for, or whatever. And so now everybody's paying for it. Know.
And it circles back to what we originally said, right? This burden ultimately falls on the shoulders of IT. And it's not just a regulatory burden. Like you said, there's feelings involved. People feel bad. It sounds like a silly thing, but like, mental health in the IT space is a very real thing, So anyway, a little side tangent there. But I know you had another slide here you want to talk about a little bit as well, Eric, and that is the persistent risks, right? And I know this one's a little bit interesting based on some of our previous conversations.
Well, this is the one I think that we don't pay enough attention to, because there's sort of a big gap. And I have a long-standing kind of crusade against this whole thing where IT has kind of built this antagonistic relationship with the rest of the organization. They don't really get along as well as they should in a lot of places. So one cause for, I mean, everybody's at fault, but like one side of it is people just literally dumping, this is your problem now. Hey, IT, come here, deal with this, make this go away. And so what'll happen then is we forget that the ultimate risk to us is always our people, and smart people do stupid things. Doctors are generally really intelligent. I mean, it's not easy to go out and get a medical doctorate and get your license and get through all this, but they have to learn all this hard stuff. Like they have to learn about insurance. They got to learn about HIPAA. They have to learn all these things too. And like, well, all I wanted to do was help people, but I'm over here filling out, So with the mindset of somebody who just wants to help their patients, you can imagine walking into and this has actually happened. You go to a popular lunch place around a hospital and you'll hear, Miss Smith was in again and that foot's really bothering her. And if I can hear that at another table, that's a HIPAA violation. But they're like, well, it's IT's job to keep us compliant. Like, it is also your job,
right?
Or have you ever gone into your dentist's office? This mostly happens at the smaller facilities, but you go in and they'll have like client paperwork arranged. They're going to file it, they're going to deal with whatever they need to do, but you can see it while you're standing here at the counter. That's a HIPAA violation.
Right.
And all these things. So we always get you got the internet, you got the email, and all those things that IT really, really has to worry about. You got the inbound side, because obviously attacks are coming in we are, the healthcare industry is highly targeted for,
Right.
you know, and ransomware and all these other things. So you have all of this bearing down on you, and then you have to remember at the core of it, you've got that one doctor who cannot resist clicking every single link that comes into his email. He just can't do it, you know. So
Right. I once stumbled across a doctor's publicly accessible Yahoo calendar that contained patient information.
yeah,
Yeah, that was not a great one. That was many, many, many years ago. But still, like you said, I mean, these people go into the industry, they go into the space with the best of intentions, you know, not even fathoming that they would have to deal with these problems, but that's the reality of it, right?
right.
Unfortunately.
I mean, if your mindset is I just want to help people, then it doesn't necessarily occur to you that there's somebody out there who wants to take advantage of that. Like, how many times have you sat around and like, who in the world would make an emergency room stop functioning to get money? Who would do that? I mean, that is like the most horrible thing. You got kids in here with, you know,
Oh
life-threatening
man.
illnesses. Like, we're not going to let you treat those children until you pay us money. And, you know, so I can see somebody who doesn't have that kind of mindset going out there and doing things like this because they're like, why would you steal that? What's important about that? You know,
Right.
who does that? But, you know, we're
It's the
surrounded by these people.
unfortunate world we live in, unfortunately, right? So, anyway, well, appreciate you taking us through that, Eric. So, again, as we mentioned earlier, we're kind of focusing in on the 365 space today, right? And I wanted to spend some time talking about considerations and tools for compliance directly in M365. And, you know, I guess first off, you know, if you are using 365 services like many in the world are today, you know, how are you preparing for a compliance regulation audit, right? Well, I think the biggest thing here is to realize, and we've kind of alluded to this fact already, is it's not always about the tech. The technology is obviously a big component of it, right? But this is a people and process issue, right? It involves the entire organization, right? And
We have the medical records on the desk.
you're right, exactly. So I mean, IT can't control all of this. I've heard it time and time again, not just specific to HIPAA, but you can't. What's the saying? Maybe you remember, Eric. It's something along the lines of you can't rely on technical solutions to solve a human problem, right? Or something along those lines. And it absolutely applies here, right? You know, knowing which controls you need to implement obviously is step one. You know, when you're talking about HIPAA, you kind of know what your controls are. Do you need to go out and make sure they haven't changed recently? Are there some controls that maybe don't adhere to your organization? Possibly, depending on what type of medical organization you are, but you need to know what controls that you need to implement. Then you have to implement those controls, right? That is step two. And then documenting the evidence is step three. You know, it's kind of an important component for having a successful audit, which, you know, if anybody has gone through an audit, you know, auditors are the, well, the nicest of people, right? I shouldn't put it that way. I'm sure there are some very nice auditors out there. Maybe I shouldn't say nice or not nice. I think what I mean is that I have the only auditors I've personally ever interacted with have been very intense. We'll put it that way.
Yes. They have
They've
a
been
job to do, and their job is to be intense and to find all those tiny little cracks. We're sitting here like, really? This is what bothers you? But like, well, but that's literally what they're getting paid to do. So,
right. Exactly.
okay.
Step four, and this is the difficult part, right? And that is the maintaining over time, because you have an audit come in, okay, you guys did good here, here, and here, but you messed up here, here, and here. Okay, and we know what we need to fix. We go and fix it. Now everything's good, right? But as we know in IT, things change, people change, processes change, company requirements change. Maintaining that compliance over time is possibly the hardest thing to do. And well, you know, the good news is if you have other regulatory bodies you have to answer to, like PCI was the other example we gave earlier. Being compliant with one regulation really gives you a nice head start on others. So that's a piece of good news. And well, another kind of helpful component here is if you're starting to go through a compliance audit for the first time, talk to others who have been through an audit just to kind of get an idea of what it looks like. I know I've talked with several that have given me wildly different accounts of process and things that have happened. But what I found, maybe you can confirm this, Eric, is that the end result is often very similar. There's going to be this big meeting where here are the findings, right? And however the auditor got to that point may be different, but usually that end step tends to be the same from what I've seen in my experience. So,
Well, I don't know that I would call that an end step though, but sure. Because usually it's like, now we're going to build the task forces to go solve these problems. And then
that's very true.
task force, like, how do we never have that happen again?
Right. How do we never have that happen again? I've heard that so many times.
What you're talking about, it builds itself one way or another, because it's like, oh, that fine was not, that was unpleasant. Let's not do that again.
Let's not do that again. That's right. That's right. Well, coming back to 365, again, I want to start by talking about some of the built-in tools, and you're going to see a common theme here. You know, I kind of objectively really looked at a lot of the built-in tools, and again, I'm drawing on some of my experience as being a Microsoft MVP for a number of years, and just knowing how Microsoft and the Microsoft product groups work. There's one theme I see across a lot of these built-in tools. While they are, mature tools and they have a lot of useful, nice features, what I've learned about Microsoft over the years is when they go out to create a tool or a new product, it's usually with the mega enterprises of the world in mind, right? Now, I want to start by talking about Purview Compliance Manager. Fantastic tool. You probably need a whole team or at least a small group of individuals just to utilize this tool. Don't get me wrong, it's very feature rich. It does a lot, can be accessed via compliance.microsoft.com, comes in 24 different languages. And what's nice about it is it's really designed to kind of highlight those controls and whether or not your environment adheres to said controls. And you kind of get some baseline controls included with it. If you have M365 E5, which we all know is extremely expensive, you get what's called premium templates. You get 3 premium templates for free. But if you don't have E5, you have to pay for the premium templates. And don't quote me on what the cost is. They're not super cheap from what I recall. But, in the case of healthcare, you'd go out and you'd purchase the HIPAA template. That would pull in all the HIPAA templates or the HIPAA controls into Compliance Manager for you to utilize in your environment. And there's some nice integrations. The other nice thing, and I love the wording here, for the lawyers in your life, right? There is access to the Microsoft Service Trust Portal, which has all the legal documents that your lawyers could ever want to read. So certainly a feature-rich product, but requires a lot of resources and a lot of knowledge to use. And what we found is that there's many organizations that they kind of know what controls that they need to check the boxes for. And instead of looking for, the wrecking ball, maybe that's a bad analogy, but the big, huge enterprise grade tool, maybe they want something that's a little bit more targeted for their specific needs. And that's what we're going to get into here in a little bit. Couple other M365 compliance features of note. You've got the data loss prevention features, email encryption, the litigation hold stuff that's contained in M365, Defender in all its various forms. And there's a lot of, I guess you could argue, compliance-ish type of features, quite a few of them contained directly within Azure Active Directory. And yeah, again, when I look at all of these tools, they all have their place and they're all useful, but kind of the same issue as Compliance Manager. You really need a team. They're really designed for siloed IT teams to use them properly. I look at data loss prevention specifically, and the amount of time and effort it takes for many organizations to go through and correctly label all their various resources and set up the controls and then maintain it and manage it. It's a lot, right? And I think what is important, like I said earlier already, is the fact that a lot of organizations are just looking for something that's easy, that checks those check boxes for them. And again, I'm not downplaying any of these tools. You know, I like Microsoft products, you know, but again, these are typically generated for the mega enterprises of the world. And are there exceptions? Sure. You know, there are those organizations that have a, how would I put it, Eric? Very spirited IT teams that do take the time, and to their credit, learn how to use some of these tools, but there's a lot of overhead, right? I don't know if there's anything you would add to that, Eric, but that's just my 2 cents.
Well, I really like where you're going with how these things are really targeted at the large enterprises, because as you ran into in the situation with your mother, they clearly didn't have those large teams to.
Right. And I mean, the way that the user experience for the message she got, it was like prompting her to sign up for an Azure Information Protection account, but it was wanting her to already have a user account in Azure Active Directory, which she's not part of the tenant. She's a patient, so she shouldn't have to have an account in Azure AD. And I'm looking at that, and knowing what I know about the Microsoft Cloud, I'm like, I got to give them credit for trying, but the patient experience here obviously is not working like it's supposed to, right?
Right.
Anyway.
So they don't have the people, because what probably happened is they got it all working, and it's like, it's great because like I am a patient at you know, the places that I'm also an assistant, you know, where I help with IT, and I go in and then the doctor fixes me. So I almost assume what's going on here is that whoever they tasked with assembling this has that Azure AD account, so they never got a prompt when they were testing it, and they're like, yeah, this works great.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
and then because you need teams of people, okay, we need to start cold, you know, completely cold, and from the beginning, follow the user experience through. That takes time and effort, and you know, it's easy to talk about, but it's much harder to do. And then
that takes operational maturity, I think, is the official industry term, right?
Of course they have a phrase for it, right? And then of course people like, you know, your mom is like, I don't know what to do, so then she's calling the front desk staff, who they don't know what to do. It's just, and then it turns into this whole cycle of frustration.
And then what likely ends up happening in some cases, and this didn't happen in her case, we ultimately got it figured out, but you might have a situation where like the front desk staff starts getting frustrated and you know what, we'll just send it through via a OneDrive sharing link or email or
right.
And there's your HIPAA violation, right?
Because they're trying to do the right thing by the customer and then unknowingly putting the entire organization at risk.
Right, and exactly.
Just because just from trying to do the right thing. And I think that's the worst of it. Most of your violations are going to come from people who have no ill intent whatsoever.
Yep, exactly.
They're just, you know, the patient really needed my help and I gave it to him, and okay, great, bye.
Yep, exactly. So
unfortunately, when you come in, the auditors are going to be like, well, that's very kind of you, here's your fine, you know, so.
Right, that's very kind of you. By the way, you owe us money. Anyway.
And you're putting this on the shoulders of people who really probably shouldn't know any better. You know what I mean? And this is where it all gets so crazy. And that's
exactly. I think you said it perfectly. Most of your HIPAA violations are probably from people who had no ill intent, right? And I mean, again, the state of the industry, right? So
it's hard. Well, there's a whole lot you have to know just to work in this field. I mean, there's your day one, no matter who you are, no matter what your job function is. There's so many things you just kind of have to know right out of the gates, because you're
right, definitely. On this particular slide, I kind of alluded to this a little bit already, and it's an older slide from one of our old decks, but I saw it and I'm like, you know what, I want to throw this in here because the point stands. If you've tried to license specific features in M365, it's not great unless you spring for the E5 licensing. Like I said, this is an older slide. I'm pretty sure that E5 licensing cost has gone up. And they've also added the annual commitment. I think they added the annual commitment last year, so where you were committed for 12 months. Maybe they added it the year before. Don't quote me on that. But if you want to go month to month, I know the monthly per user cost goes up, right? So if you want to guarantee you get those security features, you have to pay a whole bunch per user. Can you do it ad hoc? Can you grab, on Azure AD P1, P2 here? Can you grab a Defender license here? Yeah, you can do it, but now it becomes a whole thing just to manage it, right? Which again comes back to time and effort on IT teams. So that's where a third party comes in, right? And I've kind of talked about this a little bit already. The key point here, and maybe you've run into this too, Eric, and I have talked with some auditors where there's kind of this icky feeling, right, where they don't like to see the same vendor being used for both, security and compliance as well as productivity, because there's kind of an inherent conflict of interest there, right? That's like the factory owner is also the compliance inspector here, right? And I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a control that says don't do that, but there just seems to be kind of like a gray area there, right? And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Eric. That's just some talk I've had with a couple of auditors over that point.
Yeah, but you also run into the place, because even though that's the fact, but the manufacturer still knows the parts better than anybody else. So it's a circular firing squad, I think they call that.
Right.
So
definitely.
It's like you can't get it better without making something else worse.
Right.
So that said, though, a lot of times you can then bring in these third parties who have the expertise in their field and sort of like I don't know that they'll necessarily sign away all of their responsibility, but you can kind of pass the buck a little bit. There's one thing a lot of your medical providers are doing. I mean, here we've got this product we're looking at here. This is about security in general, but you can also get people who are like, all we do is electronic health records. That's all we do. And then figuring out how, like, if you use that as a SaaS product or something else, and you can integrate it with something that's a security layer, well, half the time they're working with a security company that isn't them.
Right.
So
right.
Sometimes but where you're going with this is very complicated, and the more eyes on things, generally the better, as long as you can trust them.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I could probably spend a whole hour talking about this particular point, and we have seen cases in the industry where spam messages, for example, have been tailored specifically to beat Exchange Online protection. And that's because threat actors know you have millions of people utilizing Exchange Online, and that if you can get past Exchange Online protection for one tenant, you can do it for all of them, right? And that's just a fact. That's just the way it is, right? So that's where a third party can come in and provide some value there, right? A couple other key points here. You're not limited on what you can protect security-wise based on what your M365 license level is. Most third-party solutions, Hornet Security included, we don't care what the user's M365 license is. It could be Exchange Online Plan 1, right? Literally a mailbox, and we can secure it. Which leads to less complex licensing requirements. Third parties are good for multi-tenant situations, provides separation. We kind of talked about that a little bit already for critical security needs. And there was a time when I loved Microsoft support. You would call in for a support ticket and you would learn more about that issue than you ever wanted to know. I think those days are unfortunately behind us. I don't want to give them a hard time because it's a difficult job, but you typically will get higher quality support from a third party for specialized services like security, right? So anyway, so how can third party solutions help? And I've kind of alluded to all this stuff already, so I'm not going to really dig too far into it. But what I wanted to do was provide some examples from Hornet Security Services where we can plug in and help healthcare organizations. If I can continue to speak for the rest of this webinar. But I want to start with email encryption, and we've talked about email a couple of times, right? The point of the matter is there are times organizations have to communicate via email. And the very least in the healthcare space, you should be using WebSafe if you are communicating with a patient via email. And we do support WebSafe. We do support all of your other common encryption methods, PGP, TLS, right? So if you want to do end-to-end encryption, you can with us. Eric, like to your points, a lot of solutions make it difficult. Our solution is all done from a single pane of glass. It's easy to use, easy to manage, and assuming you've got buy-in and assistance from the sister organization, the partner organization you're trying to set up, end-to-end encryption with, it's easy, right? And I think the most common place I've seen that in the healthcare space is typically between the provider and the insurer, right? I think is the most common place I've seen end-to-end encryption in email, but maybe you've seen something different.
This is one of the few places you can sometimes send information and not be too worried, provider to provider and provider to insurance, because they all should understand HIPAA and follow it, and you probably can get a certificate of theirs so you can exchange encrypted information and things like that. So
yep,
at those two, yes, this sort of thing is a really good tool.
Right, exactly. Fax. What's that?
Better than fax.
Oh, good Lord, that takes me back. So, well, I'm not gonna, for the sake of time, I know we've got about 20 minutes left for this session, so I don't want to spend a ton of time going through every one of these diagrams, but just to kind of give you a quick eye view of how this solution works, right? You know, sender and recipient on the right, our service is in the middle, and the customer on, sorry, flip that. Sender and recipient on the left, customer on the right, patient on the right, right? So, and like I said, we have a number of different options there to facilitate the encryption. Another thing I always like to talk about in our stack that pertains to healthcare organizations, not a sexy feature, but important, right? And that is the signatures and disclaimers. So the ability to have unified, legal, compliant email signatures and disclaimers on email, super, super important there. We do provide that. And again, that's all in line. So once you set up Hornet Security Services, for incoming and outgoing email, we handle that for you based on your settings. We also provide advanced threat protection. So when we look at the different scanning methodologies that are out there and the types of threats that we have out there in the industry today, your traditional signature and hash-based detection methods just don't cut it anymore, right? Threats are more advanced than that. I mean, you look at things like C-suite fraud, heck, all the different kinds of social engineering and phishing we have, right? That's where advanced threat protection comes in. Steps in to really help healthcare organizations spot those really kind of behavioral type of attacks, as opposed to just, oh, hey, does this email match the signature file I have? Nope, so it must be safe, right? No, that's the old way of doing things. That's where advanced threat protection comes in. And our advanced threat protection engine consists of a ton of different components. I mean, we're doing file type analysis, binary analysis. We have 500 plus different behavioral analysis sensors inside of our sandboxing engine. I mean, we will actually, if we suspect there's something strange about this piece of email or this object, throw it in the sandbox and we will peel it apart and see what's going on with it, right? And the important part of that process is, you know, obviously all the stuff is important, but the most important part is the reporting and data analytics, right? So, you know, who are those alerts going to? What are the who gets the ATP reports? Who gets that forensics information, right? So we can provide all of that with advanced threat protection. Backup, you know, data retention is obviously a big component in the HIPAA space. We have two different backup products that I want to talk about today, just really briefly. We have 365 Total Backup, which provides backup and recovery of Microsoft 365 mailboxes, Teams chats, that's group and individual user chats. We do SharePoint document libraries. We also do OneDrive for Business. This solution can also do Windows-based endpoints. So, you know, if you want to you know, chief of security, you want to back up their endpoint for some reason, you can do that with our solution. So that's an option. There's a lot of different, you know, different things and places that you can geographic locations. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. A lot of different geographic locations that you can store this data if you want. So if you're a healthcare organization in the EU, you can store it in the EU, or we have a North Virginia data center that's here in the US. You can store your backups there, or Canada, or a lot of different places that you can store your data, and a lot of different restoration options as well. If you want any more information on that, you can go out to hornetsecurity.com. We have a ton of information out there on how 365 Total Backup works. A couple of new things just really quick inside of this solution is we now have the ability to automatically delete old versions based on retention policies, and automatic deletion of backups for deleted users and groups. So if you have users that are sitting out there that have not been with the organization for a while, we can automatically delete those backups as well. We also have a VM backup product. So if you're running Hyper-V or VMware-based virtual machines on premises, we have the ability to back up those virtual machines as well. I'm not, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through the entire list here, but the big new feature in version 9 that we just added a month or two back is immutability. So that's specifically to address ransomware concerns. So we do that with cloud immutable storage. So you take your local backup, you send the offsite copy out to Amazon S3, Azure, or Wasabi Cloud Storage, and the backups become immutable for a period of time that you define. So if you want your cloud backups to be immutable for 30 days, not even God can change those backups for 30 days after they've been written, right? And that's kind of the point when it comes to ransomware. Now, the product that I want to spend just a little bit of time, and I've got a quick demo for you here in a second, is 365 Permission Manager. And this is the newest tool that we have in our feature set. And really what it's designed to do is it's designed to look at SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business, help you understand what is shared, how it's shared, it allows you to configure sharing and monitoring policies, and then identify violations based on the policies you created, and then delegate audits to either security staff or delegate those audits to maybe department heads, right, based on SharePoint site ownership. So this is solving a lot of problems. So you think about just the management of M365 infrastructure, the rapid growth of SharePoint and OneDrive, especially. You think about how easy it is for users to share stuff in 365. Any document I open in any Office product, there's a share button at the top right. Oh, I'm working with Eric on this, this patient's health plan. I'm going to share it with him really quick. And maybe Eric's part of my organization. Maybe he's an outside physician. Who knows, right? The point is how easy it is for users to share data in 365. And then that data access can become a problem, right? And on top of that, you've got risky default configurations in 365. There's no easy way to identify external sharing exposure with the native M365 tool sets. Governance is complicated. To wrap your hands around all of this, especially for an organization, for a tenant that's been established for a while, you're working through multiple configuration panels across multiple portals and tools. You got to go to Azure AD for this. You have to go to the SharePoint site admin for this. You have to go to the SharePoint folder level for this, the SharePoint file level for this, and God forbid anyone break inheritance anywhere in that SharePoint site library. So that's the problem that this tool is solving, right? And a lot of that applies to OneDrive for Business too. So why do you need 365 Permission Manager? Well, hopefully I just made my case, right? Couple other key points here is, one, access only ever increases, never gets reduced. Eric, have you ever had an administrator, whether that's an IT administrator or a company administrator, come to you and say, you know what, let's take people's permissions away. Let's roll back permissions. I can think of one time.
Expiring.
What's that?
But the closest you get is expiring accounts.
Yeah. I can think of one case in my 23-year career where I've been asked that question once.
Oh, no, I don't even know if I've got that. I mean, retroactively, individually, yes. Like this person, oops, they clearly are not using their permissions responsibly. I've had that. But I don't know that unless there's been an audit somewhere along the way.
Right.
Don't
Right.
have people who walk in and go, oh, we need to rethink
Right.
and review. And I don't want to say never, but
Which is then a nice segue into my next point, is the fact that audits are never done by people who understand the data and whether somebody else should or should not have access to it, right? And so that's another problem that this tool helps solve. And then 365, for a lot of things, has an all or nothing approach, especially when it comes to sharing. You know, when we talk about external sharing, it's generally like enabled or it's not, right? Which creates a problem. And I mean, the problem is if you turn it off and your end user really needs to share something, they're not going to be like, oh, well, I'm not allowed to share it. Chances are they're probably going to find some unsecured shadow IT method to share it, right? Which then becomes a problem. Which then brings me to, you know, the 365 Permission Manager audit lifecycle, or what I like to call the CISO circle of happiness, is what I call this. And really, it's kind of what we've talked about already. You know, at the top, we've got, hey, this new marketing site, for example, is compliant with defined company policy. There's no file shares with external access, right? Yay. Well, you know, patient information and just business starts happening, right? A user shares a file in Teams with an external party. And then, you know, permission manager says, hey, you know, the marketing manager alerts the marketing manager that, hey, this file has been shared with an external person. And then what permission manager then does is it says to the marketing manager, hey, is this a legitimate business case? The marketing manager then can either fix the violation on the spot and remove that external access, or they can hit approve saying that this share is allowed for business. And all of this is tracked and auditable. So like one of my product managers likes to say, when they hit that approve button, they are approving in blood that file is that share is allowed for business use. And then the product also has the ability after a period of time to come back and alert the manager again and say, hey, that folder was shared, that file was shared 3 months ago. Should it still be shared externally? And then the manager goes to that person that shared it, says, hey, are you done with this share? Oh yeah, we finished that project, what, a month or two ago? And then, you know, they make the change, they close up the external sharing, and the CISO is happy again, right? And hence the CISO circle of happiness. So with that, I'm trying not to murder people with PowerPoint, but I'm going to go ahead and move into a demo environment here with the 10-ish minutes that we've got left. So let's do that. You should be able to see permission manager, Eric. You're nodding your head, so I'm assuming you can.
good.
Good. And I've got this zoomed in quite a bit, so I'm going to have to scroll left to right a little bit, but I wanted to make sure people could read and see what's going on the screen here. So like all of Hornet Security's products, this tool is accessible via our online control panel, just cp.hornetsecurity.com. And you come in here and you can access Permission Manager and all of our other awesome security products right through this portal. And right off the get-go, Permission Manager will give you this very dashboard-ish type view, right? And that, hey, we can see what the compliancy health looks like across our tenants. And I can see that, hey, you know, I've got 4 SharePoint and OneDrive for Business, you know, entities that are compliant with the policies I've created, 4 that are non-compliant, and 6 that have warnings, right? And then I can see based on Teams sites, SharePoint sites, and OneDrive, you know, what that breakdown looks like. I can also see violation trends over time. So I can see that, hey, since June 11th, it looks like we've had 1 anonymous link shared. So you can kind of see how trends change over time and different violation types, and a number of other pieces of information based on the control panel or on the dashboard here. The other nice thing is you can expand this sidebar here. Again, just for visibility, I've got it minimized. But, you know, if you're setting this up for the first time, the first thing you're going to want to do is come in here to compliance policies, and there we go. That's what I get for not refreshing the lab environment just before the webinar. So let me come back in here into the dashboard. So go back to compliance policy. So again, you're going to come in here and you are going to define a policy that basically is a set of controls that you would like your SharePoint and OneDrive for Business accounts to adhere to. So I can see here I've got a number of different policies. So we're looking at internal only. So instead of creating a brand new one, let's go ahead and take a look here at an existing one. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to edit policy, and I can see a number of different configuration options in here. If you want a policy to be set as the default that gets applied to, you know, every SharePoint site, every OneDrive account, you can do that with this little slider here. And then, hey, what do we want to control in terms of internal sharing? Do we want to see an alert when a new user or group is given access to this folder or this document library? Do we want to see be alerted when there are items that are shared with everyone? Do we want to be alerted when new indirect group access is provided? So the example I always give for that particular one is, think about a case where you have a worker that moves from department to department. So maybe Eric is moving from IT and wants to fulfill his dreams of becoming an accountant and moves into the accounting department, right? So obviously somebody's going to go in and change his group settings to the accounting department. You can have permission manager set up to where it can throw an alert that says, hey, Eric now has access to the accounting SharePoint site. Are you sure you want to do this type of thing? So really handy in those types of situations. We can alert for all types of external sharing, you know, items that are shared with external users, anonymous links, public group privacy levels. And again, the common question I get here is like, okay, yeah, we're configuring all of these policy settings. Are we actually making those changes right now? No, at this stage, you're simply defining what the parameters should be. What should the policy be? What should my SharePoint and my OneDrive site settings and share settings look like? And then what the tool will do is it will alert on any deviations, and then I'll show you where you can go and you can actually audit and resolve those things later on. So a couple of things here, you know, some site configuration settings, you know, do we want to configure a specific external sharing level? You know, we can do that here if we want to. You know, existing guests, new and existing guests, anyone. Default sharing link, do we want to alert on that? You know, default link permissions, guest access expiration. There's a lot of different things that we can change here. The other thing here that's really interesting, so let's say I'm working with an outside organization and I don't want to see interactions with that outside organization as being a violation of policy. That's what this trusted sharing section here is. So you can see we got onetest.us in here as a trusted sharing domain that will not trip up policy. You know, it won't raise policy alarms based on that domain, which is kind of useful. And then, you know, violation grace period. How long do we want to allow violations to be around? You know, to have resolution time, 7 days, full audit. How often should somebody come in and review a site or OneDrive account or whatever for you know, compliance purposes? 6 months. We have a couple of different options there. And what should alerts look like? Should they be daily? Should they be immediately? Every hour? A lot of different options there. And so with that, after you've defined your policy, you can assign it on that same screen I showed you just a second ago. But then you can go to, I'm going to discard those changes, out to the Explore Sites view, and this is where you can see how your different SharePoint document libraries, how your OneDrive accounts are stacking up based on those policies that you define. So you can see here, the admin team is doing good. They're compliant with policy. The all company site has got to do an audit by the 19th of June. Bob's communication site, not doing so well, not compliant. An audit is required immediately. And the screen's useful for that purposes, but it also has a number of other useful features too. So there's a quick actions menu here. So you click the quick actions menu here, and there's a number of things that I can do quickly that are very useful. So like, okay, hey, I know I've got a bunch of external sharing happening in this in my organization that I need to shut down like right now. You can come in here and you can set an external sharing level. Do I want to clean up orphaned user accounts? I can do that here. Do I want to remove everyone permissions, revoke access for a user group, or set site permissions? I can do that all from within here as well. The other nice thing here is like if I would just want to see, okay, what sites or OneDrive accounts have anonymous access set up? Boom, that's right here. It shows me. And I can even drill down into these a little bit too. So I can actually come in here and I can explore Bob's com site. And I can come in here and I can see that, okay, there's been a bunch of document restores in this particular library, but I can drill right down in here into specific files and folders, and I can see what does the permissions look like here, right? It gives me a nice simplified view to see the settings for this particular file, for example. Or one of my favorite features of this is our view as option. So if I want to see what does my organization SharePoint and OneDrive stuff look like from the viewpoint of Bob Sullen, I can filter my view to see what Bob Sullen has access to. And this is useful for a number of different reasons, right? Maybe I want to, audit internal access. Maybe I'm worried about, internal users doing something nefarious. Maybe Bob's account got compromised, and now I need to see what did Bob have access to, so I can see what the blast radius is for this incident, right? So that's really useful from that perspective as well too. And then finally, if I want to audit any of these, I have that option right here. So if I want to go look at Bob's com site, I can come in here and walk through this wizard that will walk me through fixing the external share level, fixing the default sharing link, fixing the default link permissions associated with Bob's com site. Now, some of you may be saying like, hey, that's awfully complicated for just regular end users. And Andy, you told us that this tool can empower my department heads to do this, right? Well, it can, which brings me to my second favorite feature in this particular tool, and that is this to-do view. So when a policy violation is detected, an email gets sent to, in the case of a SharePoint violation, can get sent to the site owner of that SharePoint site. In many cases, that's a department head, right? So that department head would get a email that says, hey, they're sharing violations, click here to review these violations, and they're taken to this very simplified to-do view where you can see all of the different violations that they kind of have, a view into, right? Violations that they are responsible for. And they can come in here and it's just a very simple wizard. They can either approving it for business use, or they can fix it outright right here. So like the case of this this file in Jackie Brownstone's OneDrive, like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and remove access to one item, fix it. And what the tool does is it reaches into the SharePoint, or in this case, the OneDrive share settings, and makes that share compliant with the policies that are associated with that particular OneDrive account. So again, at a high level, that's kind of the problem that this solves. And can you do this with inbox tools? You can, but it's super time consuming. And I could spend I said this a few times during today's session, I could spend a whole hour just talking about the pain of doing that. For example, I don't know if you've ever run into this, Eric. There's a default group in SharePoint called read, right? With a capital R. And it is exactly as it sounds, read. Did you know that you can create a read group, a group called read with a lowercase r that has full permissions to a site, and it's only viewable at the shared folder or the shared object level. You don't see it anywhere else. So you have to drill down in SharePoint to that folder or do some sort of API call to find it or notice it. So if I'm a threat actor and I'm trying to set up persistence, maybe I can just make a group called read with a lowercase r, and it looks absolutely legit, right? That's like, oh, that's a read-only group, right? No biggie. And you don't know unless you drill into the group settings that they have access to everything. Anyway, now that I've made it so nobody is going to get sleep tonight, I'll move back to the PowerPoint. So
No, the
And
trick
I
is
know
just go out, make your own lowercase read group with read permissions, and then you're done because you can't have two with the same name.
that's a good point. That's a good point. And it's allowed because I don't have the time to go into it because we're already over time. But there's UID issues, and we'll have to cover that in maybe a future podcast episode. Anyway, so I'll wrap up in Q&A. So where does the permission manager stuff fit specifically? So it's going to fit inside of our plan 4 option, all the way on the right, that is coming soon. So as our services are bundled, as you move from the left to right here, you get more services. On the left-hand side, you start with, your typical email protection. As we move to the right, we get more features, right? You get ATP and email archiving in plan 2, you get backup in plan 3, and in plan 4, you get permissions management, some governance tools, as well as our security awareness services in plan 4 as well. A couple of resources I want to leave you with. One, you can look at the handout section of GoToWebinar, and we've got some permission manager handouts in there that you can take a look at. Otherwise, if you want some information that we've put together and that we found as part of our security awareness services, you can take a look at the ESI benchmark report here. A lot of great information in here about spear phishing attacks and the general human behavior around them. So very interesting read here. We also have our cybersecurity report for 2023 that has an in-depth analysis of the M365 threat landscape. Fantastic document here that has a lot of useful information for organizations. You can grab that here too, and don't feel like you have to hurry up and jot down the URL. You will get a copy of the slide deck after the session today. We are also recording it. One other thing I want to mention here, how would you like us to follow up with you? So using the email address that you signed up for this webinar for, we can sign you up for newsletters if you're interested. Maybe you want to see a free trial, 365 total protection, or maybe you want a trial of Permission Manager, or maybe you want to talk to one of our professionals. Just go ahead and select 1, 2, or 3, punch that into the questions form, and then we'll know how to follow up with you. The other thing is, like I said, we've got your email on file. If you would like us to call us direct, you can put your phone number into the questions form if you want. Questions form is not public, FYI. Important distinction there, especially being this is a HIPAA compliance webinar. But again, we can get a hold of you in case you would like any of these 3 things. I know we're over time. I want to wrap up here pretty quickly. Let's see. In terms of questions, no HIPAA policy provided in encryption has to be built. I'm not really sure where that one's going in terms of a question. Just generally talking about encryption for HIPAA, right? Encrypted communication, which, like you said, Eric, as a general rule of thumb, most organizations probably should not get used to just using raw email for communication of PII or PHI, but at the very least should be using encryption or WebSafe if they're communicating with the patient, right? I think we hit home on those points pretty hard. I don't know if we missed anything there, but yeah, I think the other place that I have run into issues in terms of questionable HIPAA practices is in terms of migrations. We didn't really talk about that. And maybe you've seen this too, Eric, especially with migrations to cloud. People get HIPAA compliant on premises and then they move resources to the cloud. And I have seen a lot of organizations that don't do the due diligence to make sure that they are then HIPAA compliant in their new cloud solution. Right. Or they assume because it's the cloud and there's a big vendor behind it that it must be covered for them, which then brings us back to Microsoft's shared responsibility model, which is a whole other webinar. But I don't know, have you seen that in your experience too, Eric?
From people that have tried to go it alone, yes. Most of the time, like if you get a Microsoft person on the phone and to do any sort of guidance on migration, one of the first things they'll tell you is, let's get you a partner. Let's find somebody who knows what to do. We've done this before, and they'll help you. I guess it depends on how much money you have and how willing they are to talk to you. But I would say if you're not 100% sure, I mean, literally 100%, then just bring somebody in.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and we have talked about this across multiple topics, so I want to hammer it home again that the fines cost more than the fees.
That's the truth. That's the truth for sure. All right, well, we are officially 10 minutes over, and I want to make sure everybody has time to get back to their day. But if you did ask a question that did not get answered, we will be sure to reach out to you via email, or maybe, like I said, we'll do a follow-up blog post or something to clarify those questions for you. But other than that, Eric, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and talk with us today. We always have a great time doing these presentations. I appreciate your time, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. And all of you watching, appreciate taking the time to hang out with us today while we talk about compliance and 365. Hope you found some value in this. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, you can always email me directly. I'm not afraid to give up my email address, andy@hornetsecurity.com. Or you can go out to hornetsecurity.com for more information, or you can email sales@hornetsecurity.com too if you want just some general product information. A lot of different ways to get a hold of us. But other than that, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to spend it, the last hour and 10 minutes with us. Have a great day. We'll catch you next time.